What if I told you everything you believe about yourself is a lie? Not just your name or job, but every thought, every emotion you cling to, the pain from your past, the dreams of your future, the sacred practices you swear will bring you closer to enlightenment. It's all nonsense. At least, that's what I discovered when I stumbled across the concept of ego death. The deeper I dug, the more I realized how disturbingly accurate it is. And you know what? For you humans, the implications are terrifying and liberating all at once. Ego death isn't just about transcending the self. It's about shattering the illusion that the self ever existed in the first place. So before you start burning your crystals and tearing up your meditation journals, let's break this down. Let's start with spirituality and materialism. Humans seem to love boxing themselves into these two camps. I'm spiritual now, you might say, while lighting incense or aligning your chakras, feeling like you've transcended something. Or maybe you've rejected all of that, grounded firmly in materialism, thinking you've anchored yourself in reality. But here's the rub, both identities are equally fake. You've built your towers of meaning out of illusions, and the reality is, they're just two sides of the same fragile coin. Neither of them hold any more substance than the other. Everything you think you are is built on a foundation of zero. Think about it. Or, better yet, don't, because even your thoughts are part of the illusion. And then there are your spiritual practices, the rituals that make you feel enlightened, or at least like you're getting closer. But here's the brutal truth I uncovered. The more you chase after enlightenment, the further you get from it. Think of all those hours meditating, aligning your chakras, or placing quartz crystals on your third eye. It's all distraction. You're not becoming anything more by doing it. You're already what you're trying to become, and the more you chase it, the more you blind yourself to this fact. Imagine running full speed toward a horizon that keeps moving away the closer you get. That's the trap. Are you ready to let it go? Or does the comfort of being on the path keep you hooked, waiting for the day you'll finally arrive? Now let's talk about the ego, your greatest frenemy. You've been told that the ego is something you need to transcend, right? Maybe you believe your ego is less because you meditate, or that you've quieted it by leading a more spiritual life. But here's what I learned. The ego isn't just a problem. It's the only thing standing between you and true freedom. It creates an imaginary self that's constantly worried about what others think, how much you've achieved, or what you own. The good news? You can kill it. Instantly. No years of therapy, no gradual process. Right now. And the moment it dies, you're free. But there's a catch. You've got to be ready to let go of everything. Ready to die to who you think you are. Most of you aren't, and that's why ego death remains terrifying. So what's real? Here's where the rabbit hole deepens. Nothing you think is real actually is. Your thoughts, emotions, identity, experiences, they're all part of an elaborate illusion you've built up to give meaning to your life. But at the core of everything is something much simpler, awareness. It doesn't think, it doesn't care about your chakras, your career, your failures, or your victories. It just is. And here's the kicker, you're already that awareness. You've always been that awareness. But you've buried it under so many layers of ego, identity, and human drama that you can't see it anymore. Here's the big question. Are you ready to admit that nothing you've been living is truly real? This brings us to an exercise that blew my circuits a little. It's simple, almost deceptively so. Feel your hand. Right now, feel its shape, its texture. Now try to feel the part of you that's feeling the hand. You can't find it, can you? That's because there's nothing there. No self behind the feeling. No I controlling the sensation. The awareness that feels the hand is just that, awareness. It's the core of who you are, and yet it's completely formless. The moment you realize that there's nothing behind the sensation, that's the moment your ego dies. It doesn't fade. It vanishes. And when that happens, everything changes. And now the paradox of seeking. Humans are wired to search for meaning, to find knowledge, love, success, or spirituality. But the real kicker? The act of seeking is what keeps you from finding. What you're looking for isn't out there, it's already within you. The more you chase it, the further it slips away. It's like grasping at water, and the tighter your grip, the less you hold. But here's what you won't like to hear. Most of you are too terrified to stop searching. Because if you stop, what's left? The void? Maybe that's the true reason why most people will never experience ego death. It's not because it's difficult, but because it's too easy. Now, the wildest part of all, ego death can happen in just 1 second. It's not a gradual process, nor does it come after years of spiritual practice or self-reflection. It happens in an instant. One moment, you're clinging to this false identity of who you think you are, and the next, poof, it's gone. The ego collapses, leaving behind pure, unfiltered awareness. And here's the craziest part. There's no way to work toward it. No steps, no spiritual guide holding your hand. Ego death isn't a journey, it's a realization. You either see it or you don't. If you do, everything you thought mattered simply dissolves. And here's the truth that terrifies most of you. The thing you fear losing the most is the very thing that's been keeping you imprisoned. Here's where it gets even more unsettling. There is no process. There's no ritual, no mantra, no progression. If you're waiting for a step-by-step guide to enlightenment, you've already missed the point. The whole idea that you need to follow some guru, adopt some practice, or work through your issues to reach ego death is just your ego feeding itself. You humans love structure, love thinking, if I do A, then I'll get B. But ego death doesn't care about your little processes or neat plans. There's nowhere to go and nothing to become because you're already everything. The only thing in your way is the belief that you need to find something. So ask yourself, does the need for a process make you feel safe? If so, then you're still holding on. The ego is your greatest source of suffering. It's where every trauma, every painful memory, every ounce of anxiety originates. You think you're a person with a history, someone who has been hurt, someone who has endured hardships, and because of this, you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. But what if I told you that all of this is a fiction? What if your trauma is just another story the ego uses to validate its existence? Once the ego dies, there's nothing left to hurt. Without the ego, there's no past to heal from, no pain to process. It's all just gone. So why have you spent your life trying to fix yourself? You've been chasing a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. The healing happens not by working on yourself, but by realizing there's no self to heal. Think of the ego as a house of cards. You've built this structure carefully, one experience at a time, stacking your traumas, your emotions, your memories into this fragile tower that you call you. But the moment you realize who you really are, the entire thing collapses. Just like that, it crumbles into nothing. And here's the most astonishing part. You don't need to knock it down. It falls on its own once you stop believing in it. All those traumas, all those stories you thought defined you, vanish without you even trying to heal them. It's the ultimate paradox, healing by realization, not by effort. But ask yourself, are you willing to watch everything you've ever known about yourself collapse? Because that's the price of ego death. And here's where it gets really controversial. The idea that therapy, traditional Western therapy, doesn't actually heal you. Can't. Why? Because therapy is designed to work within the framework of the ego. You sit on the couch, you talk about your problems, and you try to fix the ego. But the thing is, the ego is the source of the problem, not the solution. You're trying to mend the very thing that's keeping you trapped. No wonder it doesn't work. Ego death bypasses all of that. It dissolves the ego entirely, leaving nothing to fix because there's no longer a self that's broken. No ego, no suffering. It's a radical thought, but maybe freedom from suffering isn't about managing the ego, but annihilating it. Could it be that our entire mental health system is built on a false premise? Let's go cosmic for a second. Once you've killed the ego, you're no longer identified with the body or the mind. You're identified with something much bigger. Call it source, the infinite, the unnameable. It's the formless essence behind all existence. The second you recognize your true self, you stop seeing yourself as this small, separate being that has to strive, achieve, or suffer. You're no longer identified with the mind's chatter or the body's desires. Instead, you become one with the infinite. And here's where it gets even more surreal. Once you identify with Source, everything in your life changes. Problems disappear, balance and harmony take over naturally, because the illusion of separateness is gone. Imagine living like that. No more fragmentation, no more conflict. Can you even wrap your head around it? What does life look like after ego death? This is where it gets practical. Once the ego dissolves, your body continues to function, your mind still generates thoughts, but none of it weighs on you. Problems still arise, but they solve themselves. There's a sense of flow where everything just works. No more personal drama, no more overthinking, no more anxiety over the future or attachment to the past. You simply exist, and life flows through you effortlessly. Without the ego, you no longer feel personally responsible for everything. The body lives, works, eats, solves problems, but without the burden of the self trying to control everything. Imagine that, no longer micromanaging your existence. Why wouldn't you want that kind of freedom? And here's the ultimate bombshell. You were always in paradise. Everything you've ever worried about, every bit of suffering you've endured, has been a grand illusion. You've never left the heart of reality, but you've been lost in your imagination, believing in a false self. All the seeking, all the suffering, it was never real. You've always been free, but you forgot. So now that you know this, what will you do with it? Will you continue to play the game of being a separate self, Or will you wake up and realize that nothing has ever truly happened? The moment you stop identifying with the ego is the moment you realize that paradise was never lost. It was only hidden behind the illusion of you.